Cavemen didn't live in caves. Almost none of them did. That fur-wrapped brute you're picturing right now, hunched in a cold, dark cave the second you hear the word, is a lie. And the strangest part is that the lie is hidden inside the name itself. So if our ancestors weren't huddled in the back of a cave, where were they? Stick with me, because the real answer is stranger and a lot more impressive than the cartoon. Now, in fairness, the myth feels obviously true. We literally call them cavemen. You've seen the drawings, the museum dioramas, the cartoons, all showing the same thing: early humans tucked into a rocky cave beside a fire. It's everywhere, which is exactly why nobody stops to question it. But here's the first crack. If prehistoric people really lived in caves, all across the planet, there's a serious problem. There aren't nearly enough caves. Huge stretches of the land our ancestors lived on, open plains, grasslands, river valleys, frozen tundra, have almost no caves at all. So either most of humanity was fighting over a handful of rocky holes, or the whole picture is built on something else. It's built on something else. And that something is one of the sneakiest traps in all of archaeology. Here's the trap. A cave is a time capsule, sheltered, stable, protected from wind and rain and sun. So anything left inside, bones, tools, ash, paintings, has an incredible chance of surviving for tens of thousands of years. Now picture a shelter built out in the open, from wood, hide, brush, and bone. Out in the weather, how long does that last? It rots, it collapses, it blows away. Within a few thousand years, there's usually almost nothing left. So when archaeologists go hunting for early humans, guess where they keep finding beautifully preserved evidence? In caves. And guess where they find almost nothing? Everywhere else. So read that carefully, because it flips everything. We never discovered that humans lived in caves. We discovered that caves are the one place their belongings survived. That is a completely different claim. And the moment it clicks, the real homes of prehistoric people start to appear out of the fog. Because when conditions were right, and open-air sites did survive, what turned up was astonishing. In Ukraine, archaeologists found homes built out of mammoth bones. Not a couple of bones, hundreds of them. Huge tusks and jaws arranged into round huts, some using the remains of dozens of mammoths, built around 15,000 years ago. These weren't the panic shelters of confused brutes. They were engineered structures, deliberately designed, that took planning and teamwork to raise. In Israel, at a rare waterlogged site that preserved what normally rots, they found brush huts more than 20,000 years old, the floors still laid out where people had lived. Across Europe, post holes and hearths and rings of stone show people pitching camps in the open, over and over. Our ancestors weren't hunting for a hole to cower in. They were builders. So why does the cave part of the story refuse to die? Because they did use caves. Just not the way you're imagining. This is where it gets really good. When prehistoric people did use caves, they mostly didn't live deep inside them. Think about it. The deep interior of a cave is pitch black, hard to breathe in, and bitterly cold. Nobody wants to sleep back there. What people actually used were rock shelters, shallow overhangs, and cave mouths. The sunlit porch of the cave, never the dark basement. That's where the light was, where the air moved, where you could keep a fire and see danger coming. And those famous deep chambers, the ones covered in breathtaking paintings? Those weren't living rooms. People walked into the dark by lamplight to make art and hold rituals, then left. And here's the detail that should make the whole myth collapse. The most famous prehistoric humans of all, the Cro-Magnons, are named after the place their bones were found. And that place was a rock shelter. Not a deep dark cave. A shelter, open to the light. The very name we've pinned this whole myth on has been pointing at the truth the entire time. So how did we get so convinced of the opposite? Because the caveman was, in a real sense, invented. The word itself is barely more than a century old, a product of the Victorian era, when people liked to picture their ancestors as savage and primitive, because it made them feel civilized by comparison. Early archaeologists, naturally, dug where the evidence was richest, in caves, which only deepened the illusion. And then, popular culture finished the job. 100 years of cartoons and films hammering the same image into every child's head, until it felt like ancient memory instead of a modern invention. The hairy man shivering in the cave isn't a record of the past. He's a character we wrote. And that character has been quietly hiding who these people really were. Because when you strip away the cave, the club, and the grunting, what's left is genuinely remarkable. People who read the seasons and moved with them, who built warm, sturdy homes from whatever the land gave them, bone and hide and wood and brush. Who engineered shelter on open plains where the nearest cave was 100 miles away? Who painted in the dark and buried their dead with care? The word caveman tells you they cowered in the rock. The evidence tells you they were among the most adaptable builders our species has ever produced. The cave was never their home. It was just the one place patient enough to keep their story until we were finally ready to find it. And the cave is only the beginning. The clubs, the grunting, the idea that they were stupid, all of it falls apart the exact same way the moment you actually look. And that's exactly where we're going next.